When it's frustrating, when it's tiring, when it's overwhelming, you press anyway and you just decide, like, this is what I want. And so this is what I'm going to do. That's how I show up in all these spaces.
Welcome to the You Are a Lawyer podcast. Karla Aghedo. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you, Kyla?
I am very well. You and I were just chatting offline about how we connected through another podcast guest, Tiffany Obang, who was on the show last season with Sugar Cookie Books. She's a children's book writer. And I said that really casually, but I think she's written like 22 books. So she's definitely an author. She is a well-respected author. But Karla, it is great to meet you. And would you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Karla Aghedo, and I do share my husband is from Nigeria, West African. I love him. I think he's amazing. He's got a beautiful accent, and I think our name would be Aghedo in his
Mm.
beautiful accent. I'm from Kansas. I was raised in Oklahoma, and we moved to Tyler, Texas when I was 13. So I say my name, Karla Aghedo, and that's just me keeping it real. It's Karla with a K, Karla Aghedo. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing for 14 years. I specialize in white collar criminal defense. Started as a prosecutor in East Texas and moved into a global law firm. And I could tell more details about how that all worked out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
You were talking about
yeah.
practicing law and what your typical days are like.
Okay. Well, typical days at this point are a little bit crazy because I am a full time entrepreneur. I own my own law firm as of April 1st, 2020. So, started a new law firm in the middle of a global pandemic. Woo woo, just how you do
Yeah.
it, right? I'm also a homeschooling mom that also started in the middle of the pandemic and has continued now for these 4 years. I'm also an executive wellness mindset coach. So I'm curating wellness retreats and doing one-on-one coaching with professional women like us who need to reclaim their power through wellness. And I now own a bookstore. So I'm sitting in the bookstore today recording this podcast, preparing for a children's reading day that we're doing as part of Joy Fest. Joy
Okay.
Fest is a celebration of all things joy in the bookstore this week. So talk about a typical day. There are plenty of fun things to talk about.
Yeah. And I love that because I started this podcast for one, because I was practicing and working in a non traditional way. And I was like, are there other lawyers who are doing this? And you are one of those lawyers. You run your own business. Fantastic. You own a bookstore. You said that really casually. Huge deal. We'll definitely talk about that. And then you also host these wellness workshops, the H3W.
Yeah.
How did you get started with the workshops? Let's do the workshops first, then the bookstore.
Truly, in the fall of 2019, I'd hit a wellness wall and I was out of my global law firm for 6 weeks. And during that time, healing and recovering from surgery, taking some mental health leave, I also had the opportunity to tap into my purpose and my values and really consider, like, what's the what and the why behind the what that I do, right? What's driving me? What do I consider most important, and are my values being served? And one of the things that recurred to me was all the faces of Black women in big law, in these major corporate law firms, these global entities that were really struggling, struggling to do the wife thing, the mom thing, and the billable big law attorney thing. And I found myself coaching those women for my entire career, and nobody called it coaching. I didn't
Yeah.
realize it was coaching, and it really did start in the summer programs, before I was even hired as a full time associate. And so the one thing that I left that time with was this determination to be a resource and to make sure that no other woman like me ever walked this path by herself, not knowing where the resources were, where she could get the help, right? But even most importantly, understanding and believing that life could actually be better, right?
Yeah.
That sort of starting point, this belief that it doesn't have to be this way, was kind of the game changer for me, because whether you know where to look or you know who can help, if you never believe that life could be better than it is right now, then you're not going to look for help. You're
Yeah.
just going to assume you have to keep trudging through. And so that birthed Houston Wellness Workshops for Women. And the idea was to go into law firms, honestly, and help teach and coach in group settings on how to reclaim your power through wellness of mind, body, and spirit, and how to keep showing up in power inside of those spaces, right? And doing it in sustainable ways.
Yeah.
So when I thought of it, the idea wasn't to leave, right? The idea was to stay, but do it in a sustainable way.
Yeah. And what I love about that is most people don't want to leave, right? A lot of lawyers, we just went through all of that stress of applying and the LSAT and all of this because we want this. We don't want to do anything else. This is what we want. We've been talking about it. We've been paying for it. This is what we want. But I feel like with your wellness workshops, you're giving women permission to change their mind, even if that changing their mind is just changing the way that they work, right?
Yes.
Because I am a recovering workaholic because I love to work. I love to create. My husband loves to create. And most of the time when we were dating and courting would be us sitting next to each other working together because we both love to work. And then we get married 2019. We have our daughter 2020, but the pandemic started before we even had the daughter, right? So like the pandemic's March, we have her in June. And then by August, I'm like, I enjoy something other than just working. I had no idea I would actually enjoy parenting. And then, like, I think the fact that we had to all be together, I was like, wait, now it's been 18 months and you tell me I got to send her to a stranger? I was like,
Mm,
no,
mm.
there's no way. But I also had never imagined that I would have wanted that, right? Like, I really dug into this podcast because I was like, okay, if I leave Big Law and do this full time, I got to replace my salary. And that's why I had to like ramp it up because I was like, okay, let's go, let's go, let's go. But I would have never imagined that, you know? And I remember looking for coaches and mentors to be like, can I do this? And there was no one because either most people didn't want to leave the law or they wanted to leave because it was toxic, not because they were just like, I've replaced my salary. Am I still allowed to leave? So I love that you are making this space available because it really was missing. There was a big void.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the other hand, I sometimes feel like the space is so crowded and everyone's talking about self care, self love, everyone's talking about wellness and well being. And that kind of gets a little bit to that discounting of yourself, not
Yeah.
respecting the unique value that you bring to every conversation that you're in. But it also highlights the idea that a lot of these conversations that are happening are still not happening with and for Black women lawyers, right? Any lawyers at all, right?
Yeah.
In ways that are really meaningful and that resonate with us as lawyers.
Yeah.
When I look up hashtag wellness for lawyers, it's still very few posts. It's not a super popular hashtag.
Yeah.
And so, it's my reminder that there was someone like Kyla looking for me, just like I was looking for me. And there may still be women like us looking for someone like me. And so I've
Yeah.
got to make sure she can find me, versus
Absolutely.
hiding and thinking that everybody's doing it so no one's going to notice or need me.
Yeah. Well, let me give you some encouragement because everyone, it's not everywhere. Because you do this, your algorithm is probably filled with wellness, but it's not everywhere. People are definitely still looking. That's why I love platforms like this because now I can introduce you to a whole new audience. Because the audience of You Are a Lawyer is like 65% law students who are looking for new careers or things to do after school, and then like 30% young lawyers. And so now they'll be listening and they'll be like, wait, Karla exists? Oh, okay, let me contact her.
Love
Um,
that.
yeah, because to your point, even if these things exist, maybe they're not resonating with people in the way they should be. Because for me, even when I have conversations with friends, it was that whole permission piece. It was like, okay, I get that I should relax, but when I take an hour off, I don't know what to do. I'm still
Mhm.
thinking about work, right? Karla,
Hmm.
help me with that. And you're like, I
Yeah,
will. I have an
absolutely.
executive wellness mindset strategy. Here, let me show you. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I love it. I love it. So Karla, do you work with people and clients all over the country or only in Houston, Texas?
Absolutely all over the country. And
Okay.
again, great question. So Carla, why is it called Houston Wellness Workshops for Women? I have to be honest. We moved to Houston in August of 2017.
Okay.
And so part of the reason I put Houston in the name was to let people know I'm here, right? And I want to be here. But we moved from Washington, D.C., and every ideal client that I could imagine was either in Washington, D.C., or New York, or Chicago, or California, anywhere within Houston, because that wasn't my network. All of
Okay.
my friends, all of the women who I could see who needed this were from somewhere other than Houston. So Houston is in the name. I live here. I'm loud and I'm proud about being here for the last 7 years, but I absolutely serve women from all over the globe, honestly. Just as an example, I host a space called Tea Time online, and I've been doing that consistently since May of 2020, every single week, Tuesday at noon Central, 1 Eastern. And on that call, we have consistently and faithfully Chicago, Miami, Johannesburg, South Africa, California, Houston, Alabama, right, New York, Boston. It's all on that call,
Yeah.
and those tend to be my clients. So when I'm meeting with someone one on one, it's 99% of the time on Zoom. And that means we can do business from wherever we are, and we can create impact
Yeah.
from wherever we are as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Very cool. So we have to talk about the books. I do book reviews every week.
Oh, wow.
I read about 3 to 4 books a week, but I put out a video every Monday. And actually, when we get off the phone, I'm about to record these 3 books. But you have a bookstore called Sis Store, Joy Christian Bookstore. And I picked this up and I didn't even know that it was like a Christian book. I just love the
Ah,
cover. I was
love
like, the
it. The
lives
lives we
we,
actually have.
yes. And it's devotionals and it's phenomenal. So, like, I'm about to record this as soon as we get off the phone, but like, let me tell you some of the topics for when you feel forgotten by God, or bless my life when I'm trying to watch over the sick, or bless this life when I'm having a garbage day. And it's just so practical. It's like, yeah, I get it. I'm working hard. I'm trying to do things, but today kind of sucks. And it truly blesses me. So, let's talk about your bookstore and why you created and opened a Christian bookstore, and what inspired you to do that.
Yeah. So honestly, the inspiration is me being a book lover from childhood. I used to lock myself in the bathroom and have the whole family waiting because I was trying to finish a book. And then I helped my boys write a book during the pandemic. So they're published authors at ages, at the time, 6 and 8. Yeah. And the 6-year old was the illustrator. So that was pretty cool. They published their book before I published. But then I published my book, and my coach is my biological sister, Dr. Kimberly Annette Hardy. She's incredible. She's now a book coach and publisher, has put out more than 7 works, 2 anthologies. I mean, she's just incredible. So when I was working with a distressed business owner who was looking for vendors to help revamp and revive her business, I literally created this bookstore concept so that I could be a vendor in her
Wow.
store to help her have a successful business.
Yeah.
So I thank God for that. It truly was inspiration. I started texting other women, say maybe you can join me, my boys, and my sister as authors, as vendors in this booth, right? In 1 week, 30 of them said yes, right? And so now we really have a collective, right? But honestly, my whole goal was to help another woman in business. That's where it all started. And then the idea of creating a platform for other women who've written great books to actually share those books was really inspiring to me, because I saw many, many women who do great things. They're highly productive in multiple different areas of their life. And it feels like oftentimes when they write a book, It's like a bucket list thing. They did it, they checked it off their list, but they're not necessarily sharing it with others and getting it into other people's hands. And I'm guilty of the same. Lots of people are like, oh, you wrote a book? Yeah, because I haven't been talking about it enough,
Yeah.
right? And so a lot of the reason for this platform is to say, hey, ladies, let's get your great book, your great work, your great story into the hands of people who need it. So that's why we have Sister Joy.
I love it. Okay, so what is the title of the book that your boys wrote and illustrated?
Ninja Might, Rise of the
Ninja Mike.
Bible Ninja Kids.
Okay. I'll have to grab that for my little one. That's so exciting.
Yes.
We love reading. I'm not a TV girl. I mean, I might watch a couple of things and it's always a rerun because I just want the familiarity of knowing it and just kind of like just hearing it in the background. But I love reading. And I told my husband, I was like, we have to raise her to be a reader. And every night it's like, okay, choose your 5 to 8 books to read. And she's like, okay, Mom, I only chose 4, but they're big books. And I'm like, that's fine.
I love that.
And I
so
remember
much.
one of her teachers, because she is in like a little preschool now, and they were like, so I wanted to talk to you. And we're like, yeah, we're like, so I think Madison knows how to read. And we're like, well, she should. And they're like, no, but like she'll be yummy down. And I'm like, well, we read books and we tell her this is that. And she was like, people don't do that. Like, we really appreciate the fact that you're actually spending time with her. You're not just reading out loud while she's running around the house. And I'm like, well, thank you, right? Because no one had told me that. We were one of the first couples in our friend group to get married and then have a kid. And so we were the pioneers doing it all by ourselves. And we're like, I'm glad someone noticed. We thought it was just regular. So we're huge readers, and we'll definitely have to add Ninja Mite to our collection. So,
Yay! It's a
yeah.
powerful thing for parents to partner with kids in literacy, and it is a rarity these days.
Yeah. I have pictures of me, oof, maybe 5 years old, going to the library to get our books. And I've had my same library card number since I was 3 years old. And so
Oh,
I was like, yeah, she can get books and she can put on my account, but she needs to have her own number as well. I'm like, there's some ownership to that and knowing my card, these are my books. So I love that. I'm here for the authors. Karla, we know that we both enjoy reading. We are both parents. But what was it like when you decided to homeschool? What was the process like when you decided, I think I want to do this myself?
yeah. So first of all, I had daydreamed about homeschooling before I was married, right? Like the idea that when I have children, wouldn't it be amazing to homeschool them? And then I quickly pushed that idea out of my mind because I'm going to law school. I have been a summer associate. I can only imagine what it'll be like being a full time associate. There's no way a woman like me is going to be able to homeschool her kids. So, entered the global pandemic, and I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. The 3-year-old's program was canceled immediately. Sorry, we're
Okay.
just not doing pre K 3 anymore, right? And then the 5-year-olds transitioned to virtual, and it was a hot, holy mess. A whole mess, honey. Hashtag do not send 5-year-old virtual scavenger hunt. That is work for parents. Just don't do it. I just want to put
Yeah.
that out there. Okay, so we're trying to manage this online schooling for these really small people, and it really was just work for parents. It really was like parents are back in kindergarten, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I'm also trying to build a business. My thought was, I wonder if I could just do this myself, since during school hours, I am needed 99% of the time, to push the mute on and take the mute off and push the mute on. I mean, it was a lot.
Yeah.
So while I already was juggling a lot, this educational platform is not making it easier. It's actually making it harder. And I've always wanted to pour a ton of great values into my kids. So why not? Right? And yes, it was propelled by the pandemic, but now we're doubling down because of all of the self esteem issues and the courage issues and the speaking abilities, reading abilities, self efficacy, self confidence, just all of that I'm seeing bursting out of my kids, right? And yeah, every once in a while they talk about going to quote unquote real school. And then I ask them what's not real about this school. Okay. Right. One of the things I'll say when we talk about that practical process is I live in the state of Texas. And there's lots of things I don't brag about. Okay. But one thing that's happened here is there's very, very homeschooling friendly rules.
Okay.
And so if there's someone listening, the first thing you want to do is check the rules in your state,
Okay.
about how to homeschool and continue to be compliant with compulsory attendance, right? Because the design is to make sure the kids are protected, and that they're not just in a black hole, not getting what they need.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we started. And every day is a new day. It's not perfect. It's not even particularly cute, but it works.
Yeah. What kind of resources did you use as you were preparing? Are there, like clubs or events that you could have went to that kind of taught you some of the things, or what?
There are plenty of co-ops and parenting groups and Facebook groups and all of that. But you have to remember, I did start this with the purpose of pulling us out and away and back, right?
Okay.
So I still haven't connected us to a lot of homeschooling groups where our kids could be interacting with other kids. And so that's kind of the next step for us. But it was really important to me for us to establish our values, our routines, and really our authority, right, as their parents, because
Yeah.
our kids had been in a school environment with teachers and other
Yeah.
kids. And so, making the transition to like, this is us was a real thing.
Yeah. So, Karla, I have one question that just keeps going through my mind. A lawyer who has done a lot of things that might look like they're very, very different, right? Owning a bookstore and being a wellness executive coach and homeschooling. And how did law school prepare you for these things? Or even how did practicing law prepare you for the life that you have now?
Yeah. Don't forget, I still practice.
I know. So besides the juggling, how
Right.
how did it teach you?
Um,
Yeah.
I feel like law school, we're all learning a way of thinking, right? And a way of problem solving. And so at the end of the day, I'm problem solver in chief, right? That's how I view myself. And I may not always come up with the most elegant solutions to the problem, but you better believe I'm thinking about how to solve the problem. And of course, I'm using my analytical skills and my communication skills to do that. I think the other thing when it comes to law school preparing you is kind of, that the stamina and the get up and do it again piece of it. Because quitting law school just wasn't an option. I just never thought about that. It just never occurred to me. And I do want to kind of credit my environment. The University of Virginia. It's an excellent school. I had great peers, wonderful professors, and I don't remember anyone talking about quitting law
Hmm.
school. There was a 65-year-old cardiologist who was like, I may need to take a year off so that I can go perform a few surgeries and come back and finish this, like,
Totally doable. We
right?
understand. Yeah. Go
He
save a
already,
life and then come
right.
back.
He'd already had this illustrious career, and this kind of intellectual pursuit for him. But for the majority of us, it was like, we're doing this and not doing this isn't really one of the questions.
Yeah.
And so when it's hard, when it's frustrating, when it's tiring, when it's overwhelming, you press anyway and you just decide, like, this is what I want. And so this is what I'm going to do. That's how I show up in all these spaces. You know, this is what I think is needed, you
Yeah.
know, and so I'm just going to do it. And it's
Yeah.
not really an option to think that I'm not. Yeah. And I'll
Yeah.
throw
Even,
in the value of rest, okay? It's in there, okay? It is. But
well, I love
also,
that because
yeah.
even as you're saying that, problem solver in chief, I'm hearing the commonality of your story,
Mhm.
right? You wanted to find wellness opportunities and options, so you created it. That's problem
Mhm.
solving. You wanted to be a vendor for other authors. So you opened your bookstore, right? You wanted to teach your children how to have more confidence and understand and get better at learning it. And so you created it. Your entire story is where you saw a problem and then you solved it.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So Karla, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience about what it's like to be a lawyer or all the things they can do with their law degree?
Oh my gosh. I love being a lawyer, honestly. And I also loved law school.
I did
So,
too. We're in the
okay.
minority in that.
That's what I wondered. There's so many people who talk about not loving it. I freaking loved law school.
Me too.
You asked, like, what can my law degree allow me to do? Again, that ability to analyze and then source solutions, I carry with me everywhere. My confidence in my ability to learn it or find it or read about it, research it, makes me feel like I can, right? I can do it and move into whatever space I need to move in and move effectively through that space. Not with this overconfidence, that I'm a lawyer, so I know everything. No, that's not what this is. I'm a lawyer, so I can find the answer. That is what it is,
Yeah.
And maybe I'll dial a friend who can also help, because I respect other professionals who know what they're talking about as well, and I bring them in on the team. But I definitely take a squad approach, and I will build the team and the coalition to make it happen. And I think that's a part of the skill that I learned as a lawyer, and I don't want to give any of that back. You won't be able to take my law degree from me any day.
Well, even if they tried, they couldn't, and they still wouldn't be able to remove all of your, ambition and persistence and all of that stuff that you learned and that you bring along with your law degree. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, Karla, thank you so much for coming on the show and speaking with me. My last name is Ghanaian based, and I know we always mispronounce it too, Denanyo. And that whenever my husband says it, it's a completely different articulation. I'm like, sorry, babe.
I love it. Beautiful.
So,
Our stories connect and overlap in some beautiful ways. We got to stay connected.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm definitely going to email you this book review. I did a book review on Rest is Resistance. It's one of my favorite books that I read last year. So,
Yes.
Yeah, we'll definitely stay in contact. I mean, I have to come out to Houston and I'll visit your bookstore because books, why not?
Yes. And then I need you to do a book review on my book.
Absolutely.
So,
I know we need way more time. There's so much stuff.
Yes. My book is Gifts from a Broken Leg, 6 Lessons of Relentless Gratitude in the Midst of a Bad Break.
Wow.
So, yeah.
It's a great
I'd love
title.
for you to review it. Thank you. I'd love for you to review it and tell me what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. I sure will. All right, Karla, I'm going to go search for your book and your children's books. And I will talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks so much, Kyla. Bye.